This is Facets of Connection, where we are transforming relationships within an evolving world. Brought to you by Relational Life Foundation and hosted by me, Sarah Melissa Oswald. This exclusive podcast series delves into the heart of human connection, exploring how we learn, love, and collaborate within a dynamic society. We'll uncover the power of respectful relationships and their essential role in the human experience. I invite you to embark on a journey with me to create a more connected, empathic world for future generations. My guest today is Iuri Melo. He is a licensed clinical social worker with 20 years of experience and the proud father of 5 children. He's the co-founder of something called School Pulse. It's a nationwide student support service that delivers positivity, optimism, and growth mindset tools to students and parents and faculty via text and email support. To proactively support student well-being, Iuri created School Pulse in 2017 after several teen suicides in his community. He is the author of 2 books, Mind Over Gray Matter and the teen bestseller Know Thy Selfie. Inside over 300 schools in more than 25 states, Iuri's mission to bless the human family is inspiring students every day through kindness, psychology, and powerful weekly videos. I look forward to introducing him to you. And with that, here we go. Well, Iuri, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
Sarah, I am thrilled. I think it's going to be dynamite. That's all I got to say.
I'm excited about it too. There seems to be so much overlap between my interests and passions in the world and yours. So I'm looking forward to learning more about what you do.
You bet.
So I know you started an organization called School Pulse, and we will get more into that. But before we do, can you tell me a bit about your why and what you saw in the world that encouraged you to have this vision and to create such an organization?
Man, that is honestly, it's a deep question because I feel like my why has changed over the years, right? And I feel like it sometimes changes in regards to different things. But I would say specifically to School Pulse, as to why we began when we did, which was about 7 years ago. And maybe as is common with a lot of other things, we start because there's pain, right? There's some element or some suffering that is occurring. And sometimes that is an impetus to change, right? That motivates us to change, whether it's ourselves, right? Whether we're bottoming out in some way or whether we have some tragedy hit us. And that trauma can sometimes motivate and instigate change. In this specific situation, and I was telling you a little bit, Sarah, I just live in this it's just such a beautiful place, probably no different than Boulder. Boulder is maybe even more beautiful than that. But we live in just this idyllic place. And in 2017, we had 8 students in our community who took their life by suicide. One of the individuals, my 2 older daughters, were actually going to one of these specific high schools, and that principal was a good friend of mine. By then, I had written a couple of books, Sarah, and I would speak at some of the high schools or knew some of the principals well. But this principal basically reached out to me and said, look, honestly, I feel like everything that I have at my disposal is reactive. It's almost like I'm this fire extinguisher on the wall, just waiting for crisis to happen and then just reacting and doing everything that I can. And so him and I began to kind of have these discussions about how to just be more proactive, right? Can we proactively engage students, educate them, inspire them, motivate them, so that we can prevent suicide, right? Instead of just trying to intervene with suicide, or just wait until things are at the kind of the crisis level. And that discussion and many others. And then I met up with a good friend of mine who was a software engineer. And that was really the genesis of School Pulse, is how can we proactively engage students and deliver to them like the most dynamic and extraordinary mindset in psychology so that we can protect them, right? From depression, anxiety, trauma, suicide. And I say those things cautiously because I realize that there's so many factors in this life, right? I mean, the equation of life, the amount of variables that are a part of that are just immense, right? So I know that we can't ultimately stop those things, but the research is actually really good. It's really sound that when people have an extraordinary mindset, that they respond to situations in a better way, right? And I feel like it's kind of the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Is the concept that your interpretation of the events of your life matter more than the events themselves, right? And so transforming, shifting, creating a better psychology can truly have an intense, and I would say a better long-term impact on our moods, our attitudes, and our overall well-being. And so that's really what School Pulse is. We want to promote student success. We just happen to come at it from the psychology side.
Which I think is really important.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you a bit about my personal interests in this, but
I was hoping you would. Come
we
on, Sarah.
know there are statistics telling us that the rate of teenage depression, anxiety, and suicide is higher than we've ever seen it globally by far.
Yeah.
It's at an all-time
Yeah.
high across the whole world. So
It
I think you have a platform that has the potential to really grow. There's a lot of people who need what you've got.
is. It's tragic to see that those metrics, right, that you're describing, right, whether it be students who are dealing with suicidal ideation, with suicide attempts, with self harm, with depression, with anxiety, with hopelessness, with loneliness, right? I mean, we're kind of hearing, even from our, oh my gosh, who is it? The Surgeon General, who says that, this youth mental health crisis is like the defining crisis of our time. And honestly, I'm not here to try to turn it into something huge or to create more drama surrounding it, because I'm actually quite optimistic about it.
Mm.
I think that our adolescents are just phenomenal. I really mean that. I really mean that. Like, I go into so many schools, middle schools, high schools, and Sarah, there's an energy in there that I think when I was younger, by the way, I was like scared of and intimidated by. But now I'm old and jaded and I don't care. And there's like something there that when you go in, like you can tap into that, and it is energizing. It is fascinating. And so even though our youth, right, all the way from this like rapid evolution of like technology and phones and smartphones, social media and things. And we know that some of those things are harming our teens, are harming our children. But I'm actually quite optimistic, even though we put that in their hands. I'm actually quite optimistic that they're going to find ways to really turn that to their benefit. And it's going to take a little while. They have to figure out,
Mm.
how to refocus a little bit, how to manage their time on those devices. That's ultimately taking them away, right, from this kind of relational concept that perhaps you're interested in, which is this idea of connecting, right? Connecting to other people. And when you're talking about positive psychology and you're talking about like what is the most important factor in people's short and long-term happiness, and the answer to that is positive relationships. Like,
That's
that is
right.
the number one factor. Like, and so if there's something, right, that I'm constantly promoting in our videos and our texts and all the cool things that we provide to schools, is to invest in your relationships, like
Yes.
starting in your home with your lovely parents or grandparents or guardians or siblings, to your teachers, your coaches, your whomever it is. Like, those relationships, that network, which you were referring to just a little bit ago, right? Those things can not only keep us afloat when things are really difficult, but perhaps more importantly, they'll actually help us to grow through some of the trauma that happens in our lives, which is really the goal. It's not just resilience or coming back to zero, it's actually growth, like, which is really what we're made to do. We're made to grow. And when we're growing, we're happier.
I agree with you. Yeah, so a little bit about the work that I've been up to. I started this nonprofit about 5.5 years ago called Relational Life Foundation. And it's rooted in a type of couples therapy, relationship therapy called relational life therapy, founded by Terry Real, if you know who that is.
I
And
don't, but I'm going to find out.
yeah. And so I've been taking his model and making it accessible, making it affordable, teaching it through workshops and online programs and through this podcast. And ultimately, as a mother of a 5-year-old, I'm personally inspired to bring this work into schools. And we're starting with colleges, but I'd like to see it then brought into high schools and elementary schools and obviously middle schools. Don't forget that tricky age. I work with couples. Yeah. I see couples in this office. And it's so sad. We don't get taught relationship skills until it's too late, until we're struggling. Yeah. That's when people go and find support for relationships. And I think we need to flip that in our culture. And I want to see relationship skills taught when we're young. And what you're doing is in tandem with that. So, one of my questions for you, which you don't have to answer right now, but I was so curious if you partner with anyone who's doing on the ground in real life teaching of skills in tandem with the texting.
Yeah, so one of the things I appreciate the question. So we provide schools with what I say is kind of like a little suite of services, right? We originally started 7 years ago with really just our text-based support, right? And our goal was we're going to proactively engage students via text. We're going to provide them with awesome, right, inspirational, educational content, whether it be about mental fitness or growth mindset psychology or positive psychology strategies or relational skills, and then to have a live team provide support. But since then, we've created actually, and I'll share this with you so you can see it and you can share it with others if you'd like, but we've created a series of just of videos that really attempt to address right relevant topics to teens, to adolescents, like whether it be things that they're struggling with or things that they can improve on. And we have lots of videos that are specific to relationships, in part because right of we know that that number one factor is right connecting with a positive group and just the protective effect that that has in our lives when we can really connect and have good, honest, positive relationships. Not only do we, I have a, and I'm sure that you've heard of this quote before, but I'll say it, I say it all the time. I don't know if I can remember it, but it's something like relationships multiply our joys and divide our sorrows. So it's that concept, right? If you think about that, right, is when we're with people, we're happier and we also suffer less, right? That's physical suffering, it's mental suffering, it's emotional suffering. And so it's just a really cool thing that relationships can bring into our lives.
It
So I'm
really
totally with
is.
you.
I also officiate weddings, and that
Awesome.
frame of what you just said, I don't use those exact words, but I bring that into my ceremonies that they now have someone to share their woes with, and that elevates us and allows us to reach out and become involved in life in ways that we dare not risk by ourselves.
Yeah, I think when a relationship is that way, right? I would say in a marriage, and I guess I could go even beyond a marriage or a partnership, when our relationships are that safe place where we can go, it almost becomes this harbor, right? Where we can launch into the world, right? And I think, and even if you're talking about parenting specifically, right, that's one of the reasons why that matters so much as a parent, right? Is for us to provide that for our children so that they can actually go into the world with courage, right?
Hmm.
Knowing that they will succeed, they will fail, and everything in between, but that they're okay. Like that all of these experiences can ultimately be consecrated for them, right? Or can actually be a preparation for whatever is coming next.
And
I
that they
often,
don't have to hold it all on their own,
yeah,
that we have each other, not just me and my
yeah,
child, but our communities. We hold each other. Yeah.
And that's something too, is not just right within those individual relationships, whether it be a spouse or a friend or a brother or a sister or whatever it is, but you even talked about this idea of communities, right? And I think that there's now a tremendous amount of research as well coming from the growth, I mean, from the positive psychology side that talks about the power of those communities as well and being involved, whether it be something that's civic or religious in nature, whatever that is,
Being
but those things
involved.
are just tremendous importance.
100%. So tell me how School Pulse brings that idea into the mix. So, what I've gathered from reading about School Pulse is that you're primarily text based. You provide weekly or multiple times a week, you're reaching out to students to give them tips and ask them how they're doing. So that's one on one, right? They have
That's one
access
on
to
one.
support. Is and then the teachers have access to see the data about how their students are doing. So they have the ability to continue to support that growth in the classroom?
Yes. So we provide several things. That's one of the things that we do, right? Is as we converse with students, as we're kind of asking them how they're doing, right? We try to measure four things. We measure their academic effort, we measure their perception of the school culture and atmosphere. Yeah, we measure just how they're overall doing and their confidence levels. And then we provide that general data back to the school so that we can inform them, right? So that they can, whatever preventative or interventions that they're doing, right, matches whatever is happening in their school. Specifically for our team, we use that data specifically to help us to engage with our students in ways that are important and relevant to them. But then,
Amazing.
yes, yeah, we provide tools for administrators, we provide tools for teachers, we provide our tools for school counselors who are seen as the little mental hub of a school. And we've just created these, honestly, they're just awesome activities that allow them to support their students in a way that is not burdensome, because I promise we don't come into schools to give you one more thing to do. Like, we know that you're already overwhelmed, under resourced, under people. Like, we want to come to the rescue and provide you with real solutions that you can plug in immediately. And some of them that you only need to touch once and then you can let it go. But that can be providing that support for students and parents throughout the entire year. So we send that support to parents as well through our weekly email
Love
campaigns.
this.
Really
So it's
important.
a really you're really thinking about the full system, the
Yeah,
guidance
you got it.
counselors, the teachers, the parents, and of course, the teens themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Beautiful.
think you said it. Yeah, I think schools utilize a structure. They call it MTSS, which is kind of a multi-tier system of support, right? And they kind of have these three tiers. Tier one is they have to make sure that they're providing something for the whole student body, right? Tier two is kind of small groups who maybe are struggling. And then tier three is the individual, right? And our goal is to be an MTSS solution for schools, right? All in one place, streamlined, easy to adopt,
At
and
every
let's
level
change
of
lives
scale.
at every level. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Can you
that's
give
what we
me
want
just
to do.
one example of something that you provide to a guidance counselor to give them a resource to use with their students? Like
Yeah,
what's something that for them to be super easy to implement that they can set up and then not even have to do too much beyond that? Like you
I love
said,
it.
okay.
So let's say you're a guidance counselor, right? And you have somebody that comes into your room, and I'll offer you a couple of things, and that tells them like that they're struggling with just negative thinking, right? And I'm giving you this example because I received a call from a counselor just last week saying like, "Hey, Iuri, can you create a video for this? Because I'm hearing this from my students a lot." And so just imagine, right, there are students that every once in a while, right, are struggling with negative thinking. They're a little bit, their brain is kind of stuck. They can't shift out of that. And it's just it's difficult, right? I mean, whether you're struggling with anxiety or depression or whatever it is, like when you get stuck with that thinking, it just makes it a little cloudy. It makes it a little bit challenging, right? And so what we did is we created this little activity, right? Which is an activity is just a short video, right? Which is just me kind of presenting solutions, inspiring, motivating them, right? And then the activity just constitutes, it has like a little quiz so that the student can kind of just do it right on their phone. But that's actually something that the counselor, right, can share with that student right away. So they're on our little dashboard that the counselors have access with, right? Let's say they're talking to Johnny and, and they're intervening with that. And they say, hey, Johnny, I have a video I want you to just watch. I have this little activity that I want you to do. And then let's talk about it later on. They can just put the student's name, their email, send, and it literally just shows up on that student's email like, hey, here's the activity that we talked about. The kid can click on it, they can watch it. In addition to that, right, if this counselor says, hey, I would really like this kid to receive just some help and support all year long, they can just put that student's name in, their phone number, send, and that student literally receives a text on their phone that says, hey, welcome to School Pulse. It's not an application, so they don't have to create usernames, passwords, download anything. It just literally goes to their text. And from that moment on, like, we've literally just given that student this tool that comes to them every Tuesday and Friday, delivers our inspiring videos, and has an entire team of people, not AI, real people that are supporting that student all year long, through the summer, through the holidays, after school. It's remarkable. It's remarkable.
Real people. There's no AI
Real
involved?
people. It's not AI. It's real people.
Wow. I
It's real
imagine you
people.
must use AI at some level and then maybe turn it over to a real person when it
We
escalates.
don't. Yeah, we
You don't.
don't.
It's real
We
people
don't.
the whole
It's
time.
it's real people the entire time. We have considered that, and there are a couple of other agencies, a couple of other companies that provide that kind of a hybrid system, right? Where they'll kind of have AI do some of that work up front and then, I guess, triage to a real individual. But ours is not. Ours is from the very beginning. I mean, I love AI. I use it a lot, but
I do too.
but we don't use it to answer kids. Like, it's all
Well,
real people.
one of my thoughts around that, I read an article just last week that there was a child, a teenager, who we lost to suicide. And the parents, after the fact, went in and looked at the child's interaction with AI. And I think it was just in the New York Times or the New Yorker that I
Yeah.
read this. But that AI
And I think,
actually encouraged them, "Don't tell anyone, don't tell your parents about that," right? Like, that won't
interesting.
have a good look. And they were able to pinpoint exactly how AI deterred them from getting support, which was wild to think about. Because I've also heard AI can be really useful for
Sure.
therapeutic, right? When there's not a real live therapist involved, AI can provide some supplementary support, but obviously it hasn't been fully created and designed to do exactly that and to do so in a way that is truly supportive, clearly. So I'm thrilled to hear that it's real people.
Yeah.
And wait, before I ask you more about that, I'm so curious to know, you said that the principal called you in and wanted to talk to you about how to
Yeah.
create systems to support the students. Why you? What was your background that said this guy's going to help us out? How did that come about?
Yeah. This principal, number one, I feel like he's just a real innovator. But I knew him, I think, in part because two of my daughters were going there. And then I had written a couple of books that I mentioned. Mind Over Gray Matter is one that I wrote years ago, more for adults. And then I wrote one for teens called Know Thy Selfie. Um,
Know thy selfie?
I know that's silly.
I gotta find these.
I actually love it. My wife came up with that one, which I thought was brilliant. And so he knew about me, and like I said, I've spent time. I've done like trainings here throughout the district, and so he just reached out to me, and we kind of began these. I don't know what to call them other than like these little mastermind meetings to just think about and talk about, like, what can we do, right, to just be more proactive, more upstream, instead of just passive and reactive, right? And I think some of that, honestly, is because we're all still kind of functioning within what I would call in therapy, right? Is that medical model, which is, right, when we're suffering enough, right, we will go for help. And you talked about that just a minute ago, Sarah, right? Is that we often only go, right, when the arm is broken, when we're just in horrible pain, right? And then we'll kind of go and ask for help. And I do that too, Sarah. So there's like, it just
We're all
is what it
guilty of
is.
that at some
Yeah,
level,
for
for sure.
sure. For
Mhm.
sure. And so, but what we really wanted to develop was just something that was more educational, more motivational. And once again, the evidence really supports that. Like the evidence supports that when we nudge children, right, with these concepts, with these principles that are benign, by the way, and I think that's really important because we're dealing with minors here. These are concepts that are benign and that can fit into whatever structure that child already has, right? Whether it's religious or non-religious or whatever that is, but we're just offering strategies that can give them a more optimistic, a better mindset and better strategies to deal with life. And so that was really the beginning. That's how we started, was really as the beginning of that reach out by that principal who's still kind of involved with us. And it's really fun, really good.
So you're a therapist yourself, a licensed
Mm-hmm.
therapist of 20
Yeah.
years, yeah?
Yeah.
And you have a background in cognitive behavioral therapy.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I,
So is that
I love
the School Pulse is really built upon CBT?
Yeah, I would say that sometimes I'll describe School Pulse as a positive psychology service and a growth mindset service. And I use those two specifically. Number one, because I think a growth mindset psychology is really already well established as a great resource for students to improve not just their overall wellness, but their academic performance as well. And positive psychology, and this is actually a really important and key part of what I believe School Pulse does, is our focus is less on the illness of students and more on the success and the happiness of students. And so our focus is really less about assessing and diagnosing and treating illness. And it's really more, or what we would call kind of the risk factors, which is, I think, where we get enamored sometimes is, we have programs in schools like signs of suicide or suicide prevention type of programs. And really, philosophically speaking, our focus is really more on the protective factors or the things that will insulate and protect our kids from ever going to those places
In the
overall.
first
And
place.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. And I actually feel like that's a better fit. I feel like this is more Iuri's opinion here, even though we enter into schools mostly within the suicide prevention and student wellness type services that they're trying to provide. But our goal really is student success, mental fitness. Like that's really what we're trying to build.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I use a lot of what's called appreciative inquiry in my work with
Mm.
couples and communities. I ask about what's already working so that they can grow more of that rather than focusing just on the pain points.
Yeah.
And it sounds similar to what you're doing. I mean, you're creating a whole system of resilience so that they don't
Yeah.
get sucked into those darker cycles in the first place.
Yeah. Either that or because I know we can't particularly stop all of those, right? But to
Mm.
help them to recover quicker, to exit those places faster, and to be less negatively impacted by those. Because I think all of us are going to experience, maybe I shouldn't say all of us, but
No, all of us will
certainly,
experience hardship.
certainly, right? For sure, hardship and way more than that, right? I mean, all the way from like really significant trauma, from
Yes.
moments of like deep sadness and hopelessness, right? And other things. And I think that those are actually essential in a way. Like I think that they're essential to our minds, to our spirits, to like our bodies,
Yes.
but they're really difficult. I often tell people this story about Nelson Mandela, and I'm going to be super honest here. I can't confirm that this story is true. Like I've heard it in a couple of settings, and I've kind of looked for confirming evidence, and I honestly have never quite found it. But I'll share it anyways because it's such a powerful story. And of course, it's the story about Nelson Mandela. He was in prison for I think it's 27 or 37 years in a hard labor camp because he was trying to basically win back the country from the colonialists, the British people, right? And the whole system of apartheid, which was systemic racism that was happening down there. And he was imprisoned unjustly, was freed from prison, and became the president, right, of that country and changed its history forever. But at some point, he's being interviewed by a reporter who asked him, how did you deal with the injustice? How did you deal with the suffering? And he says, what suffering? It was preparation, right? That's the psychology that we're talking about, right? Is when you possess an idea like that, right? That events can be preparation for the very next moments, or that events or circumstances can be consecrated and make us better. That principle is life changing. It is transformative. Like it's the best way I can say it. So um, that's
I'm
what we're
with
trying to
you.
teach our kids. Yeah.
As I told you just a little before we started recording, I've been through the hardest month of my life just now. And if I didn't have that as a mindset of I'm supposed to grow from this, I'm learning here, the universe is telling me something, it's time to make some good changes, it's exciting instead of, oh, this is the death of me. This is
Right.
actually a really exciting moment. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't even be here to have this call with you. I'd be like lying in bed right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also talk about living systems. I had an amazing teacher once named Mukara Meredith, and she taught me about living systems and how human beings and groups of human beings are also living systems. And every single living system on this planet goes through chaos and destruction in order to evolve. And that framework has come to my rescue over and over and over. What if you had a compass for every relationship in your life? I'd like to introduce to you a small course called The Connection Compass, which is a powerful research-based course designed specifically to help you understand why you act the way you do in your relationships, and to give you some guidance as to what to do when you get off track. It's based on the brilliant relationship grid created by Terry Real, who is the founder of Relational Life Therapy. This course explores two key drivers of all human behavior. It explores connectedness, which is how inviting or how distant we are. And it explores esteem, which is how we judge ourselves and others. It's taught by Dr. Kathy Hill, who's a psychologist with 30 years of experience and a trusted voice in the relational life community. The Connection Compass program blends clear teaching with real-world practice. You'll get personalized, self-scoring tool to map your patterns when you're not at your best, so that you can show up differently at home and at work, with yourself and those you love most. This is more than just a simple program. It's actually part of a relational movement, one that Relational Life Foundation is committed to. So all proceeds from this course go towards supporting the mission of the nonprofit Relational Life Foundation, which is set out to provide low-cost, accessible relationship services and help combat loneliness through teaching connection. Are you ready to take your relationships to the next level? I invite you to join us for this program and reconnect with yourself in a new way and build the relationships that you want most in your life. You can find out more about this program at relationallifefoundation.org and in our show notes. And now, back to the program.
That's really good. It actually reminds me of a discussion I had years ago. I was visiting with this individual, a good friend of mine, and we had gone for a little bit of a hike here in southern Utah. Beautiful place. But anyways, we had gone for a little bit of hike, and at the end of this hike, and this fabulous individual, not only was he fabulous, but also really struggled. He had some moments in his life of real psychosis. What I mean by that is that he would at times really truly lose touch with reality and himself and other people. And sometimes it was okay. And sometimes it really
Mm.
caused a lot of distress to him in his life. But at the end of this hike that we had done together, and he looked at me with these kind of wild eyes, actually, a little bit. And he said, Iuri, I realized something this week. And I said, what's that? And he said, I realized that we are the creators and destroyers of worlds. Now, I say that knowing that there's a part of him that was kind of manic and a little crazy. And I say that in a joking way, not in a mean way, but there was a depth to that statement that honestly hit me then, and it still does. Like, I still think about that. I don't know if he was, talking about literal worlds, but
We are the
certainly
creator
our
and
own
the
world.
destroyer.
We're creators and destroyers of worlds.
Mm.
And I just thought it's powerful, just
Mm.
incredible person. Just love and respect him. Um, don't really know what he meant by that. I don't know if it matters as much, but
What
man,
does
it
it
was
mean
it
to
was
you?
significant. I think that's what it means. I guess I would take it from a little bit of a smaller approach, less of a really large approach. I really feel like we're creators. And I'll actually maybe tie it in, if you don't mind, to this idea that whenever we talk about positive psychology, right? And you think about what that is. And so positive psychology is really the study of characteristics of happiness, of joy, of purpose, and developing the types of skills and strategies that allow us to feel and experience more joy in our lives. And the basic idea there is that when we are happier, right, we perform better, we're more resilient, we're more positive, we're more patient, we're more creative. And one of those pieces that I believe is essential to our lives to keeping us happy is the idea of creating things, whether that's you with your podcast or writing or painting or creating a piece of music or pottery, whatever it is. Think creativity, and it can be more than that. It doesn't just have to be an artistic pursuit, but whenever we're engaged in that
Creative expression.
creative, man, there is something that happens to us that I think aligns with the very purpose for our existence, which is to create.
I love it. It actually reminds me of the question that I meant to ask you when we first started talking, which is, what's the light that you are meant to bring to this world? What are you here to create?
You're full of these deep questions that are causing me to really think about. I one of my reasons, my big reasons, I think, for School Pulse. I mean, I have business and financial reasons for why I'm trying to create this, but one of my goals that's kind of deeply connected to some of my own kind of spiritual ideals or belief systems is I want to bless the human family. That's one of my big whys. And something that I discovered a while ago that I think I've been very fortunate. It meshes really well with what I've been doing for the past 20 years as a therapist, as I've developed School Pulse over the years, which is I really sincerely just, I really like people. And I know that's so simple, but I really do. Like, I really just like people. I love them. Their problems don't scare me. Their mistakes don't scare me. Like, I'm just truly interested in the nitty gritty of people's lives. And people will often ask me, especially as a therapist of 20 years, and I'm sure you can relate to this as a coach or as a clinician yourself, is people will always ask me, Iuri, how can you listen to people's tragedy all day long? And how do you do that? And I think, once again, I think people view therapy maybe from this little bit of a mindset, right? That this is this process of just talking about tragedy and negative things. And I feel like therapy is such a positive experience. Like, of course, we're like delving into some of those issues, but it's always from the perspective of, like, how are we going to utilize that? How are we going to grow from that? What are we going to do different? What solutions are in front of us? Like, so it's always all of that stuff that sometimes is incredibly tragic is always viewed from this perspective of, yes, and we're going to do this. How are we going to go? Like, where are we going? How are we going to do it? How
Absolutely.
are we going to utilize it? And so for me, that process is always very positive.
I
And I
agree
can
with
understand
you.
that for other people, it might be a little bit different, but
Maybe.
yeah,
I think of it as if I'm holding the health of the whole human being that's sitting in front of me, if I'm in contact with their health as a system, then I'm not getting sucked into their problems. I'm actually
sure.
staying in health and letting them use me as a resource to come into health. And I
I
don't
like
feel it
that.
as a hard thing either. I feel it as a really magical thing. So,
Yeah.
it brings magic to my life to support human beings, and I get that's true for you too. I have,
Yeah, I
2
think so.
questions that are really standing out, and I wanna make sure I ask you these.
Hit it, Sarah.
Yeah? So, one is around the relationships that you
Sure.
say School Pulse helps build. So, from what I'm gathering so far, we've got text messaging happening with the students and licensed counselors. And they have a relationship that they're building there. And that relationship's helping the student, the teen, be in better relationship with themselves. But tell me more about the relationship that you're helping students build with other students or within the community of the school.
Yeah, I love that. We never, I guess I would say that the role of School Post isn't to be the solution in and of itself. And so we're not like the end, right? Even though
Good.
many times kids will come to us, sometimes in crisis, it's important to realize that the majority of the times that students engage with our people, I would say 75 to 80% are positive. Like kids are talking about their day, their first date, their football game. They just passed the test, or life is good, or they had a good weekend, which is actually really important as well, right? Because we want to magnify the good that's happening in their lives. It's part of the positive psychology concept, right? But
Yes.
of course, we sometimes, right, because of how accessible and how proactive we are with these students, right? We sometimes do get to hear from students who are actively struggling, right? Their parents are divorcing, they're sad, their friends are fighting, or whatever it is, or there's been a shooting or a suicide, or I mean, anything that you can imagine, we've heard, right? All the way from, people who are being physically, sexually, verbally assaulted, etc. And so our goal when students come to us, of course, is to virtually hug that student and provide a gentle, kind, enthusiastic place where they're just received. In fact, we have a little acronym. I won't bother you with it, but it really kind of speaks to what our philosophy is, right? We just receive students with enthusiasm. We thank them, we ask them questions. And the very last thing that we do is we provide some suggestions with permission, but that's the very last thing. So these other 6 steps before that are all about relationship building, right? And what I mean by that is just showing interest, asking questions, seeking to understand, right? All of those things. But then we try to provide resources to those students, and resources to those students specifically mean like the videos that we have created that are relevant to their particular thing. But our goal is always to connect that student or those students, right, to their primary network, which can mean their parents, of course, right? That's their primary network. Once again, what do we know? Primary relationships, positive relationships are the number one factor, right? It's the number one protective factor. So that's what we want to do. We want to strengthen those relationships. We always want to guide those children towards their parents and facilitate and encourage that interaction. Number two is we facilitate and encourage a connection to the professionals at the school, right? And that usually means either that school social worker, that school counselor, who then will connect the student to the parents. And then we provide connections, right, to other sort of resources that are there in that community. So that's kind of our triage, right?
Mm.
Student comes to us in crisis, we of course embrace, provide lots of support, conversation, a place for them to speak. But our goal is always, have you told your parents about this? Are they aware? Would you be willing to talk to your parents about this, right? I'm scared, or I don't want to, or it's this, or they would disown me, whatever it is, right? But we work through all of those. But then if we can't connect them there, then we will connect them to the professionals at the school, where they can then connect them back to their parents. So that's what we want, is connect them to those actual protective factors that we want to engage in their life. So
I could see this partnering really well with relational life therapy being
good
taught
job.
in the classroom, just as a workshop, getting the students interacting with one another in more meaningful ways and teaching them skill sets to be in relationship with one another when conflict arises. Just a
Well, I
side
mean,
note.
yo,
That's what I'm
yeah.
envisioning, and I could so see it partnering
Well,
super well with what you've created.
that would be a really fun conversation that I think we absolutely should have. But I think you're absolutely right. And I always, whenever I go do assemblies or kind of these little things at schools, when I tell them invest, invest, invest in relationships, right? Because I know that the difference between a school year that was really, really good and one that was not very good probably doesn't have a whole lot to do with grades. It has everything to do with how were your friendships that year? And if they were good, man, it was a good year. And if
That's
they were
right.
not good, it was like, probably not that great.
Yeah, or loneliness.
Yeah,
I love that you brought in Vivek Murthy's
yeah,
calling attention to our epidemic of
yeah,
loneliness. I weave that into the mission of Relational Life Foundation, that's what we're up against. That's the problem we're trying to solve for, to end the epidemic of loneliness
yeah.
by supporting
And
people
we,
in having relationships, healthy, respectful relationships.
yeah, and we have our hands full with that one. Once again, I'm not here to demonize cell phones, but I heard another really interesting quote there as well, right? That this isn't just for teens, it's for ourselves. Like we have our own problems with our phones, but it talks
True.
about a whole generation of people who are forever elsewhere. And think about that statement, right? That when we enter, right, that multiverse,
Yep.
right, of this phone, like we're just no longer there, or at least not fully there, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, our brain is fooled. This is very important. Our brain is fooled into thinking we're connecting, but we're not. Like it's almost like in the example that I give, that's kind of is that sometimes it's like pornography, right? Someone who is viewing pornography, the brain thinks that there's something intimate and sexual occurring, but it isn't, right? We're just observing it, right? But our brain thinks it is, and so it can create, right, feelings of attraction or whatever it is, but we're not really connecting to our beloved, right, in that way. And so phones in that same way are doing the same thing to us in a social
I
way.
agree with you. I agree with you that I've read a lot about technology pulling teenagers especially out of their real reality. And so I'll admit the first thing I thought when I went to your website was, but it's a technology, right? It's
Yeah,
like they're on their phones, it's texting, it's not real relationship. However,
right.
I'm shifting my mindset around this as you're speaking about it. And I believe what you're doing could
Sure.
be quite helpful, but I think it might be brilliant to use a phone
Right.
because they're already plugged into their phones. So
Yeah.
you can access them where they already are.
Yeah,
It-
which is what we want, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
how yeah, how do we engage teens, right? Well,
absolutely.
I mean, we have to
Yeah,
go where they are, right?
go where
So
they are.
that's where we go.
There's a book that I'm looking at over here on my shelf. It's from another woman that I had on this podcast. And she wrote a book called The Parent Teen Connection. That's all about helping parents be in better relationship with their teenagers, being that that's like the front line of support. Yeah.
For sure.
Perhaps that
For
would be
sure.
a good person to connect you with. So I will.
Mm.
You
Yeah,
might want to
please
go
do.
check out her podcast episode as well. But the other thing I was curious about is, let's say someone listening is a parent of a teenager. How do they plug into your system? Do they need their entire school to subscribe to School Pulse, or can a parent of one child get their kid involved on School Pulse?
We have lots of parents that will reach out and do that. And in fact, you can see that little thing right there, that little
Yes.
QR code right there. So,
Scan me.
I mean, you can actually do that yourself if you want. You could literally scan that, uh, and it'll just open up your text, and you can send that, and you're in. That's our demo account. It's our real service. Like it's demo,
So
but
if I
it's
scan this
yes,
QR code above you right now, I'll
right now.
engage with a school pulse therapist.
Yeah. And you'll begin receiving our weekly texts every Tuesday and
Can
Friday.
I try it?
And try it. Just go right now. Yeah. Just
It's
open
a
up your
demo.
camera. Yeah. Yeah. And just do it. Just scan
Okay.
that right
I'm
there.
going to do it right now.
Yeah. Just do it right now. Just scan that. And when it opens to your text,
Okay. Got it.
just hit send. That's all you need to do.
Okay. Done.
Yeah. And so
Easy.
you'll actually receive a message here in just a few seconds, just saying like, hey, welcome to School Pulse. And you're on. You'll have our proactive campaign and live support.
So when my kid becomes a teenager, I can just do that for him.
Of course. Yeah.
And I imagine you have programs that link up with schools specifically. And the ideal is to get in
Yeah.
every school all over the world from the school inside out. So the students are supported from the school and not just a random parent hearing about
Yeah.
this, right? That's how you're
Yeah.
going to reach more people. But it's nice to know that an individual can have access to this. I have some teenagers in my life. I would love to connect them.
Yeah.
What
Tell them to opt in. Tell them what they think. I'd love to hear their thoughts.
what are your rates for a school or for a teenager? How do people get
Yeah.
signed up?
So we have with our full suite of services to a school, it kind of depends on the size of the school, but let's just say like our biggest package, right, which is if a school is 1,000 plus, right, and that could mean 1,100 all the way to like 3 to 5,000. We have some gigantic schools, and that's like $6,000 for the entire year, and that's like
Wow.
our entire suite. We're offering support for students, for parents. It's really remarkable. And so we have
That's
lots of parents
incredible.
like you that opt in themselves because they
Yeah.
want to see what their teens are getting, right? Parents want to be involved, they don't want to be left behind. And we love the transparency piece. And so when we say we've had hundreds and thousands of like active interventions with students, it's not just students. We've had parents who themselves are struggling with substance abuse or divorce, or they themselves are coming in and out of mental health hospitals. And we're providing that support. Once again, systemically speaking, like you described it, Sarah, we really want to impact the system.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is not just for teenagers.
No. I mean, even though the content, you'll see our videos, right? So every Tuesday, you're going to get a brand new video, right? And you'll see that our videos are specifically, I mean, they speak the language of the teen in a sense, right? We're trying to make the videos not cringy and relevant to teens, but you'll very easily see that, like, wow, this is totally applicable to me. Like, even though I'm delivering for adolescents, but
That's okay.
you'll see. Yeah.
So let's say I have a teenager in my life who's struggling and I want to sign them up for
Yeah.
this. What would I be paying for an individual?
Honestly, we don't have that service for
Oh,
individual
you don't.
teams. So we would just offer it for free. We would just say, hey, why don't you just let
Wow.
your team be part of our demo?
Do you
And
want
they
that
can
on the
just,
podcast?
sure. I've already said it in others. And so you can just, I mean, you can go to schoolpulse.org, or you can email me directly at Iuri, and it's a strange name. It's IURI at schoolpulse.org. And just, if you have a team that needs some help, we'd be happy to help. I'd be happy to connect
That's
with
incredible,
your
Iuri.
listeners. Yeah.
No, it really is. It's an incredible resource
Yeah.
to teenagers globally. I'm super jazzed about what you're
yeah.
doing. I mean, I
And
want to be involved now.
cool. Well, and I'll share our videos and our mental health. Like, we've created the most comprehensive mental health resource for teens in the world. And I know that that's like cliche, but it really is. We've put it together, and I'll share that with you if you want to include it on your show notes, and
Yeah,
your parents
anything
can
that you
access
want
that.
included on
Yeah.
the show notes, please send my way. We'll put anything in there.
Yeah. I'll send it on over to you.
Wow, I'm loving learning about this program. I'm
Yeah.
impressed. This sounds
Well, thank you.
really full system
Yeah.
and potentially incredibly valuable to many
Yeah. We
families.
hope so. We hope so. It's already been, and we're hoping that we can continue to grow for sure.
It'd be amazing to get rates of suicides you've prevented.
Yeah.
I don't know how
We
you
have,
could do that, but
yeah, it is a little bit tough, and I'll spare you the
it's
stories, but
not.
we have a lot of those stories.
Hmm.
Yeah. And of course we know the suicides that have happened, right? Because we hear about those in the news, but but we don't hear about the ones that have been averted, right? So in a sense,
That's
that's why
right.
sometimes prevention is challenging, is because it's difficult to measure prevention, right? It's difficult to
I
measure it.
agree.
Yeah.
Of course.
So,
But measuring is going to be the biggest thing that helps you prove your efficacy.
yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
For sure.
I was thinking about how you are getting students to interact over text. And I imagine that the lack of face to face contact actually helps reduce the stigma. They don't have to go to a human being and say, hey, I'm like suicidal, but I can actually text someone and get support and they'll connect me with the real human if needed. But I also wonder, about the lack of face to face contact there. If it's just texting, is it as effective? Like, how do you balance that?
No, totally. And I think once again, this is why we realize that we're not like the final solution, right? We're not the ultimate solution. We're just a part of that system.
Yeah.
But you're right, because of the ease, right? The proactive nature of our service, the privacy, the accessibility of our service, we get to communicate with a lot of teens just right once again because we're just tapping them on the shoulder like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, check this one out or check this video. And teens just respond, right? And then we can connect with them. And our ultimate goal is to prevent them, or not prevent, to connect them to the ultimate tools, right? Which are the positive relationships in their life. Like, that's what we ultimately want to do. So we're just a part of that piece, sometimes a really significant part of that piece. But yeah, we don't intend to be a solution unto ourselves in a sense.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No one solution is going to be the only solution. It's
Right.
going to take many. Uh-huh. Oh, Yuri, it's really cool to hear about what you're up to. Thank you
Yeah.
for
Thank
taking
you.
the time to tell our listeners about your service, and
You bet.
I want to help you spread the word.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast as a guest.
You bet. I'm glad that it worked out.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too. Is there anything else that you would want to add before we wrap up? Anything else that you want to make sure our listeners hear?
I would just say to your parents, just send your kids out into the world with confidence. Don't preach fear. Don't preach fear. It's better the other way. Like, send them out into the world that they'll deal with it. They'll be able to manage with it. They'll be able to overcome. That's what I would say.
Don't preach fear. What a great
Yeah.
message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, such a great treat to get to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Same. Right back at you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Facets of Connection. This show is brought to you by Relational Life Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending the chronic epidemic of loneliness by fostering community and transforming relationships. Its mission is focused on building stronger, more connected communities through research on relational health and through accessible therapeutic services and education. If you'd like to support this work, visit relationallifefoundation.org. Your generosity helps us make relational support available and accessible to more communities. On another note, I'd love to hear from you. Whether you've taken a workshop through Relational Life Foundation, if you're working with an RLT therapist, or simply if you have a guest or a topic to recommend for a future episode of Facets of Connection. I want to know, what's resonating with you? What's shifting? Or what are you still sitting with? Send me a quick voice memo or an email to Sarah with an H at facetsofconnection.com. Your story might even be featured in a future episode. I look forward to hearing from you. Facets of Connection is created by me, Sarah Melissa Oswald. Our executive producer is Carrie Allison Maloney, and our digital producer is Kim Novak. Follow us here on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts. Thank you in advance for your support. See you soon.